Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of On the Right Side podcast. I am your host, Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive, New York State Assembly member. I'm a contributor to Newsmax.com. I am also the executive director of the Center for Cost-Effective Government think tank. Now, normally, I would have sitting at this dais my partner in crime, David Zare from Real America Voice. David is on assignment traveling this week to D.C. and also in New England. He'll be interviewing Rudy Giuliani as a prelude to some September 11th events. So that gives me the entire hour to myself, which on the one hand, I kind of like the banter with David back and forth, but it gets kind of frustrating sometimes when you want to delve into detail and, you have to cede the mic for a little bit. So now I'm going to have an hour to get into a whole bunch of stuff. My first segment will start with some current events that is on the top of your mind. Then the next segment, I want to get into what's going on with Medicaid, how it is exploding in cost and eligibility throughout the nation. My center did a white paper on it, and this is an example where I'll be able to go into detail today, where in the past I couldn't because I'm deferring to others on the panel as well. The last segments, I want to talk about things in my book, The Solutions to America's Problems, which I wrote a few years ago, and it has about 15 or 16 chapters from immigration to income inequality to climate change, what we do with China, the Mideast, etc. We'll get into some particulars there. Okay, let's start with some real hot topics. The president issued 3 executive orders this past week, creating quite a fluff within the mainstream media. Here they are. 1, he wants to make it a crime to burn the American flag. 2, he wants to send in troops to various cities beyond Washington, D.C. And 3, he wants to get rid of cashless bail. Let's talk about them all. Let's start off with what happened in the Obama era. Remember, all of this stuff with the executive orders really took off with Obama. After he got shellacked in the midterms, he came back and said, okay, we had a bad year, but I got a pen and I got a phone. And what he meant with the pen was he can start issuing executive orders willy-nilly. And he did so. And a lot of people were scratching their head saying, hey, you can't do that without Congress. But he did it. Perfect example, DACA. DACA was illegal. He couldn't come in and say, hey, I am now granting this mass amnesty to all these illegals. Remember, Reagan did it in '86, but that was with congressional approval. But Obama went one step further and said, with my pen, I'm now giving amnesty to all these illegal aliens, and I'm giving you work papers and status, etc. It went through various courts, some courts saying you can't do it, some saying you can. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. They deferred and let it go on for a while. Well, we had a change in administration. Still isn't settled law, but trust me, it's illegal what he did. So Biden sees he got away with it. So Biden starts writing all these executive orders, including the one that sought to waive the student tuition from all of these students, millions and millions of students. Again, that was illegal and struck down by the court, and many others that he put forth as well. So now Trump comes along in his second term and says, well, Obama did it. Biden did it. I'm going to do it too. Well, there's 2 questions here. Can he do it? And secondly, is it a good idea to do these things from a policy perspective? All right, let's take flag burning for one. He probably does not have the authority to wave a magic wand and now say, it is criminal for someone to burn an American flag. Let's say it was even legal under the Supreme Court. You still have the question as to whether a president unilaterally can do this without Congress and set penalties. Probably can't do it. But what Trump is doing is moving forward with symbolism. and setting him and his team up on one side to put his political opposition on the other side. This is an interesting one because the Supreme Court ruled back in the 80s that, yes, you have the freedom to burn an American flag without repercussions from your government. And interestingly, that decision was written from by one of the most conservative justices of all time, Anthony Scalia, right? And people were saying, wow, how did he do that? Well, the theory was we have a First Amendment, unlike Europe and other Western democracies. It makes us different. The same way that you're able to, as Nazis, march down the street in Skokie, Illinois, and yes, the Supreme Court back in the 70s upheld the Nazis' right to march, you're entitled to burn an American flag. And it kind of gets you, right? Because we're patriotic and we can't stand the idea of somebody doing this. But Scalia fashioned that, hey, that's what makes us so special. We're such a confident, free country that you can even criticize your country to that extent where you can burn a flag. So we don't think that Trump has the ability to make that illegal, though he's trying to go around the edges to say it will be illegal when you're inciting violence, et cetera. That's really tough because it's very subjective and unlikely to really hold up with it. Now, others will say, well, what about burning pride flags or those people got put in jail for a long time, or Black Lives Matters. Well, the difference was if you're burning a Black Lives Matter flag that you bought, you're entitled to do it. But if you go on public property and desecrate a public flag, or you go on someone's house and desecrate their pride flag, you're going to get in trouble for trespassing, et cetera. So it's a tough call, but I think the president is doing it to highlight the difference in his values versus those he opposes. Now, the next one was sending in the troops. So the mainstream media is apoplectic right now that, you can't put troops in D.C. Obviously, he can, because that's a territory and they come under the auspices of the federal government. In fact, D.C. didn't even have mayors and city councils decades ago. It's by privilege from the federal government. So no question, it's legal for Trump to do it, and it's a good thing because their city council is a bunch of Marxists who have let crime run amok. It would be the highest crime rate of any state if D.C. was a state. Now, can the president start sending troops to other jurisdictions? Probably not. He can send them in certain circumstances, like in L.A., but they were having riots. They were going against federal ICE officials, so he had the right to protect federal buildings, etc. He cannot just easily go in and supplant local police forces, though, again, what he's doing is highlighting the inefficiencies of these blue cities, the mayors who have created havoc. They will claim, the liberals are saying, give us more money. That's the problem. You guys are asking for more money. You are the guys who, in the Black Lives Matter craziness in the summer of 2020, were cutting money to the police force. You were the guys saying to fund the police. So that's the difference here in the last few years. Things are going so crazy because liberals have lost their minds beyond where they ever were. So Trump is certainly right to say we've got to do something about this. It's also great that he's going after cashless bail, because when it started here in New York City in 2019, that started the real out-of-control crime in New York City and other cities that was exacerbated by COVID. But basically, it led to tremendous recidivism, and after a while, prosecutors just stopped prosecuting. The big problem we have in these blue cities is so many of the district attorneys are funded by George Soros, one of the most evil entrepreneurs in the world, total Marxist capitalist, believe it or not, made his money through capitalism, but now promotes Marxist policies and Marxist causes. So what is he doing? He's putting up millions of dollars in all of these innocuous district attorney races, realizing that he could change society quicker that way by putting up the $1 million and putting in place people like Gascon in L.A. and Bodine up in San Francisco and Krasner over in Philadelphia, and all of these Marxist, defense-oriented prosecutors who were letting people off. Alvin Bragg, who wrote a memo on day one, we're going to just stop prosecuting all of these minor offenses. So now you have shoplifting that went through the roof, all of the turnstile jumpers, nothing was happening to them. What do you think happens? It was the Republicans to Giuliani who stopped the liberal crime from the 60s and 70s by implementing the broken windows policies. You stop the little stuff because you get those guys off the street and they can't commit the bigger crimes. They did stop and frisk. They had strong prosecutors. They brought murders in New York City from 2,000 a year down to about 300. So what is de Blasio and the Democrats do? Say, no, we don't really like that. We want to go back to the old ways. And what happened? Crime went up by a third, murders, violent crime. Yeah, it's coming down a little, but it's like a guy who just gained 400 pounds, went on a diet and lost 25 pounds and say, look at me, what great shape I'm in, and I just lost 25 pounds. Yeah, well, you're 375 pounds more than you were before. Anyway, stick around. We're going to talk about Medicaid on the next section. Be right back and On the Right Side.
Who broke the television? Can we laugh at that? Sounds a little mean.
As of this month, public gay sex will now be mandatory.
Am I the only one that could see his lips move?
Cheekbones, baby.
I'm sorry, maybe I overreacted.
Corporate transfer, fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
Hey, fellow patriots, it's Cindy Gross here, host of Right for America from your favorite place, the America First Warehouse. You've seen me show on my show so many products from this country's #1 most patriotic manufacturer with close to 400 products. You need to exchange the products you use in your house to this company and make your dollars count in our country.
Freddie Rubino here at the America First Warehouse. I'm inviting you to the live taping of the Not So Newlywed Show. Just click on the QR code right above my shoulder and you can get tickets. Live taping of the Not So Newlywed Show. Drinks, snacks, it's a great time. We'll see you there October 18th.
It's me, Joe the Box, the America First Warehouse, most patriotic venue in all the land.
The America First Warehouse, a beacon for the sea, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free. In the America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Okay, we're back on the Right Side podcast. I'm your host, Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive and New York State Assembly member. I'm a contributor to Newsmax, and I'm the executive director of the Center for Cost-Effective Government. On my own today, because my normal co-host, I don't know if it's normal co-host. Let's just say my regular co-host. I don't know how normal he is. David Zaire from Real America Voice is out on assignment. But I mentioned my Center for Cost-Effective Government, and it's a think tank that I'm really proud of. When I left government in 2012, I wanted to do something with all this mush I had in my head, all this institutional knowledge. So I wanted to put together a think tank that would represent the interest of taxpayers. Because when you're in government, whether it's on the federal, state, or local level, you're getting bombarded by all of these special interest groups who come in asking for more money, more money. Well, I said I want to be there for taxpayers to say, stop spending money, stop over-regulating, allow us to live here without being overtaxed and taxed out of our homes. So that's what we do. We create a different perspective. So we create these white papers to help convince elected officials that there's utility in keeping costs under control. Let's have a government that's more cost efficient. And one thing that caught our eye that necessitated a white paper from us was all the talk about Medicaid. Now, remember, this started in part because President Trump comes in, brings in Elon Musk, who says government spending is out of control. The $7 trillion budget, which was $4.5 trillion before COVID, is now the new normal. $2 trillion deficits, which were an anomaly during COVID, are now the norm. And we can't just make this the new thing. We've got to get back to something more rational, because these deficits and debt can spell our doom. You keep on saying, we can get away with it, we can get away with it, until you can't, and it all comes crashing. So much of our wealth is in Chinese bonds, bonds that they hold, American bonds that they own and can call at any point. This is problematic, so we have to get control over our budget. One way to do it, as I've been saying for years, is to get a balanced budget amendment on the books. Because let me tell you, folks, as someone who had to live within a tax cap and a spending cap, they force prioritization. When you don't prioritize, you have these crazy deficits and this debt. And you see that with the pie chart, which is our federal spending right now. And entitlements are the biggest part of it, Social Security and Medicare. And now interest on the debt is about 12% a year. So you add that up and defense, there's very little left for the discretionary part of the government. So the Trump administration and DOGE comes in and says, we got to start cutting. Where do we do it? Well, let's look at how Medicaid has gone out of control. And they said, we've got to bring it back to something more normal. And the left and the media go crazy. You're killing grandma. You're starving kids. And it's all a bunch of bunk. And we're going to show you why. I'm going to show you how this program, which was originally founded in 1965, has gone way beyond its original intent. Let's get that first asset up on the screen here where we can talk about it, okay? These small little bullets here, but you might be able to follow. Medicaid started with a cost of $1 billion in 1966 and had 4 million people on the rolls, okay? I'm going to skip to the end here, but now we're talking about a program with 72 million people on the rolls, almost 80 when you add in the CHIPS program. That's extra medical Medicaid aid, Medicaid type aid to younger people. So you're talking about 1 out of 5 people in America now on Medicaid, and the cost, it's close to $1 trillion. $900 billion a year. Remember, go back to that first line. It cost $1 billion in its first year. And it just gradually creeped up and creeped up. So, since that time, inflation has gone up 892%. Medicaid went up 87,000%. during that time period. So you can't tell us that this is something that is the natural increase over time with inflation, okay? We can come back to the full screen at this point. But over the decades, different things added to it, okay? In the 80s, we started including not only women and children who were at the poverty level, but we started creeping above the poverty level to 133% of the poverty level, okay? Then you had the CHIPS Act, which started covering insurance for millions of lower income families, again, well above the poverty line. But the big kicker was with Obamacare. So when Obamacare came in, most people don't realize this. They basically just raised the income level for people to qualify for Medicaid. So most people think that it was Obamacare itself that insured more people. And by the way, I was very critical of the Republican Party in those years for not adequately addressing this problem. We had 44 million Americans who didn't have health insurance, who were slip and fall away from being ruined. That wasn't cool. That had to be stopped. And Obama came up with a terrible plan, but it was a plan. Tried something. But a lot of people have the mistaken impression that it was Obamacare that covered many more people. It did to a certain extent, but the bigger chunk of people were actually covered by just putting them on Medicaid. So they just kept on raising the level from 100% of the poverty line to, in some cases, like in Washington, D.C., 220% above the poverty line. Texas is like maybe goes to 15%, but it varies from city to city and state to state. And that's what we show in our report. But not only did Obama dramatically expand Medicaid, but he now made it easier for single adults to get on Medicaid. Remember, this was intended for people in poverty who were blind, who were women and children. Now you got the single adults. And at the same time, he was eviscerating the workfare requirements that Clinton put in. A Democrat wisely put in place workfare, which, by the way, worked magnificently. It actually lowered the number of people in poverty by incentivizing them to get out and get a job. You'd be able to be on welfare or Medicaid for 5 years, and then you're off. You got to be on. You got to show you're working. Obama eviscerates that. And Biden, through COVID, just takes away all the requirements. So what does Trump and the Republicans do? They wisely say, hey, if you're going to get this Medicaid, you have to work for it. What's wrong with that? Yet you have the mainstream media and you have the Democrats coming out of the woodwork saying how cruel this is, how terrible this is. What's the other thing that the Republicans are trying to do to get this program under control? Get the illegal aliens off of the rolls. Now you'll say, wait a minute. Isn't it illegal for an illegal alien to get Medicaid under federal law? Technically, yes. But do you remember when Obama was announcing Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, in one of his State of the Union speeches, there was a congressman, Joe Wilson, from the audience, in a very disrespectful manner, says, "You lie." And what a hullabaloo that was. What was he talking about, you lie? He was saying to Obama, you're lying when you say illegals are not going to get Obamacare or Medicaid, et cetera. Well, actually, Joe was rude, but he was right. They are getting it. How are they getting it? First of all, states are free to put them on the rolls, and they have. New York does, Illinois does, California does, Minnesota does, okay. But what else did they do? What Biden did was simply change the definition of an illegal alien. You have an alien. Are they legal or illegal? Well, they were always classified as illegal. But what he says is that if you just claim asylum or we parole you, you now have a legal status. So even though you came here illegally, We tell you, here's a card, come back in 10 years for your court appearance. You now have a legal status. Guess what? In the eyes of Medicaid, you're legal. You can go on Medicaid. So it has totally exploded. And all President Trump and the Republicans are saying is, number one, you want to be on Medicaid? You have to work for it. And number two, if you're an illegal alien, get off the rolls. Now, what's interesting is that it's been so expensive to fund these illegal aliens who come here from third world countries and just get automatic free health care, that even the liberal states like Illinois and Minnesota say, we can't do this anymore. We can't keep this program alive. California, even, the craziest of them all, they're stopping it for new illegal aliens, but they're keeping the former illegal aliens on continuously on the rolls. It's absolutely nuts. You want to know how bad it is in New York? New York has a population of about 19 million people, right? We spend in New York $98 million a year on Medicaid, okay? Yet Florida, $billion, not million, $1 billion. Yet Florida spends $57 billion and Texas $35 billion. You combine Florida and Texas, which have populations of 23 million and 34 million people. What do they have? 60 million people between the two of them? They spend less on Medicaid than liberal New York does with a population that's 1/3 the size. It's nuts. Come back to us on the next segment. We're going to talk about my book, Solutions to America's Problems, folks.
Corrupt judges, broken families, families torn apart. This isn't justice. If you've been wronged by the system, join us. Don't stand alone. Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, president of Americans for Legal Reform. We're the oldest legal reform group in the United States. The justice system in the United States should be transparent, fair, and open to everybody and accessible. Unfortunately, many times that's not the case. At Americans for Legal Reform, we are here to help. Join the movement. Visit AmericansForLegalReform.com and help reform the system before it fails you.
Hi, my name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
The America First Warehouse Ultra MAGA Store for all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Warehouse Ultra MAGA Store.
The Queens Village Republican Club is America's oldest Republican club, founded in 1875. Situated in President Trump's hometown in Queens, New York, we are America First MAGA Republicans, empowering fellow Republicans to get involved in the game of politics at the grassroots level. We host inspiring monthly club meetings on the first Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. For more information, please go to our website at www.qvgop.org.
It's Tuesday here at the America First Warehouse. I am Joe the Box.
And I'm John the Blanket.
Freddie Rubino here from the America First Warehouse, coming to you live, the most patriotic venue in the land.
Welcome to Right for America.
I'm James Justice. We got Stephen Ruth over here. What are we doing, Steve? Fighting!
Welcome to Tune In Tuesday of the Patriots Podcast, live streaming every Tuesday night at 7:30.
Another edition of On the Right Side here, and you can catch us weekly, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
And welcome to Liberty's Cage, where we rip the veil off America's broken justice system, prisons that crush spirits, and a society that shuns people who have paid their price.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kevin Downey Jr. Podcast. Be free, stay free.
Welcome to Suffocating in Suburbia with me, your host, Stevie GB.
Hey, welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast. I am your host, Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive, New York State Assembly member, Newsmax contributor, and the executive director of the Center for Cost-Effective Government, and also author, which I want to get into in a minute. But first, I have to thank Joe the Box, who is the proprietor of this amazing America First warehouse. If you're ever on Long Island, you go to the little hamlet of Ronkonkoma, and there is this amazing warehouse that's almost like a museum for patriots. Have tremendous events here, and thanks to Joe's generosity, we have a number of awesome podcasts, and we're live every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I usually have David Zare from Real America Voice as my partner, but he's on assignment today, so I get to talk about my fun stuff, and one of them is the book I wrote. I wrote a book back in 2012 when I left government called Bias in the Media, and that was from the perspective of yours truly. I started off as a Democrat for most of my political career, and then I just had it with their support of illegal immigration and total control by the municipal unions and overtaxation. And just like Ronald Reagan, I said, I didn't leave the party left me. And I became a Republican, more conservative. And I'll tell you, as crazy as it was back in 2012, the Democratic Party no longer exists. It's really a socialist Marxist party right now. But the media, for the longest time, has been so totally slanted to the left. And I kidded because my Democratic friends, my Republican friends, when I was a Democrat, would kid me and say, oh, it's so biased, it's so biased. And I'd say, you over-exaggerate. Then when I became a Republican, I told them, you know what? You understated how biased it is. Now I really see it. So I wrote that book back in 2012. And then during COVID, I wrote this book, Solution to America's Problems, because I'm figuring, look, I've been on a state level, I've been on a county level, I've been an executive, I've been a legislator, I've been a Democrat, I've been a Republican. How many people have all those different perspectives in one? I'm going to write my book and say, here are the problems in America, and here's my humble suggestions for changing them, all right? So I divided the book into about 15 chapters, and I'll give you just a few examples as to what we talk about. And by the way, you can get it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. And let's go into the first one. Let's go to the asset here. It's solutions to income inequality. Now, of course, we have a whole chapter on this, which refers to many of my articles that I've written for the Washington Times, the Washington Examiner, the Boston Herald, the New York Post, etc., and of course Newsmax and FoxNews.com, okay? So my first section is on income inequality, and that was an important section because back then there was a great deal of talking about it. The income inequality is growing in America. How do we fix it? And the knee-jerk reaction from the liberals is just tax the rich more. And listen, I was a Democrat who always had a goal of helping the poor and the working class. But what I found out over time is that if you overtax people, you eliminate incentive and you actually crash your economy, and you can do less to help the people you want to help, the poor, the middle, and the working class. Takes a while to learn that when you're in government, but it actually is true. So my suggestions are, number one, keep the income tax level at the 2018 levels that Donald Trump put in, and don't buy the garbage that this leads to more income inequality. Because when Trump put in those tax cuts, you want to know what happened? Income inequality lessened. The people in the top 1% at the end of it were actually paying a higher percentage of the overall revenue pie than the middle and lower classes. Why? Okay, here's why. When you lower those tax rates, there's more investment. That means companies have more profits. That means they're hiring more people. The Wall Street guys who are collecting all of these big salaries now have more income upon which they'll pay taxes. It might be a lower rate, so it's not 39 point whatever anymore, it's 36 point whatever. So you're paying a lower rate, but on a bigger pie, so the government gets more, not less money coming in. That is a fact. That is not speculation. When anyone tries to tell you, when any liberal, when any media mainstream parrot out there tries to tell you that it is a tax cut for the rich and it's going to hurt the poor, it's the opposite. More money came into the coffers after the tax cut than the year before because the economy was humming. And this wasn't a one-time thing. We saw the same thing happen in the Reagan years when they cut taxes across the board. Wages were going up by 6% a year. So was revenue to the government. And we saw it also with JFK, a Democrat. He cut the rates significantly in the 1960s. They had massive explosion of wages and growth into the budget. So while the top 1% paid about 40% of all the revenue that came into the feds, after the tax cut, it went up to like 45%. So they're paying more. It actually lowered income inequality. The second bullet here is maintain the capital gains tax at 15, 20%. Depends on what your income is. But when you sell something, your stock, long-term capital gain, it'll be 15 to 20% depending on your income. Now, remember, the Biden administration tried to change that to make capital gains payments coincide with your regular income. So that means you sold a stock, you sold your house, you'd be paying at 33% or 36% rather than 15 or 20%. What would that do to the market? It would kill it. Why do we know this? Because it was, again, Democrat Bill Clinton who, with the Republican Congress and Newt Gingrich in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, dramatically reduced the capital gains down to 15 to 20%. Do you remember what happened to the economy in the late 90s? It was on fire because you incentivized investment. It's common sense. Thank you, Joe Manchin, a Democrat, a moderate Democrat, no longer in government, but he stopped it. He was the one vote along, well, you could say Kyrsten Sinema down in Arizona. They stopped Biden from getting the 50 votes they needed to change that law. It would have devastated our economy. You want to know something even scarier what the Democrats want to do? They want to tax you on your unrealized capital gains. What does that mean? A realized capital gain is when you sell your stock. You bought it at 100. You sold it at 20. You have a $20,000 gain that you're going to be taxed on, okay? But only after you sell it. What they want to do is tax you when it increases in value, not when you sell it. So you now have to pay the tax because it went up, but you didn't sell it, so you don't have the cash to pay the tax. What would that do to the economy? Absolutely tank it. Thank goodness that the Republicans have enough members in Congress to have stopped this insanity. But that's where they were going with it, okay? Keep the corporate tax at 21%. Again, it was 35%, the corporate tax. We were totally non-competitive with the rest of the world. So what were the companies doing? They're not crazy. They started putting their money into Ireland, where the corporate tax was 11%. They were going offshore everywhere, Cayman Islands, you name it. Trillions of dollars lost to the American economy. Trump's got common sense. He says, let's lower that tax and make us more competitive. We'll actually wind up with more money. That's what he did. Went from 35% down to 21%. Hundreds of billions, $1 trillion came back onto the American shores, and we were the beneficiaries of that. Don't change it, even though they're trying to do so. Replace welfare with workfare. Remember, in the last segment I said it, Clinton implemented it. It worked fantastically. Then Obama and Biden eviscerated it. We need to get workfare back. I'm glad that Trump and the Republicans are trying to tie Medicaid to your need to go out and work. And you know, you had Andrew Yang. Remember this guy ran for president, then put his hat in the ring for a short time for mayor of New York. He has this thing called universal income, where he's suggesting, let's just pay people a certain amount of minimum income, no matter who you are, $10,000, $20,000, and, make everybody richer, okay? Now, it's an absurd idea if you just hand out the money without any conditions. But I said, okay, you want to go down that route? I'll consider that. How about this? And this is what I mentioned in my book, Solutions to America's Problems. I'll buy that. Let's give every American a minimum amount of money with the condition you get rid of the welfare system, because you can then get rid of all the bureaucracy, all the bureaucrats they're paying, all the waste that goes in, funneled into this system that is a tremendous machine, and you incentivize people to work. You're getting a minimum amount of money, but you're not going to get cut off anymore because now you started to earn some money. I'll tell you a story real quick. A friend of mine told me she owns a company. She had a good worker who came from the unemployment lines and welfare, had an end-of-year review. We want to give you a raise. The next day, the company owner got a call from her social worker. You can't give her a raise. Why not? Because she'll lose her benefits if you do. So this woman is stuck, trapped in a cycle of poverty. Got to get rid of that. You want universal income? Okay. Get rid of the welfare system. Give people some money, but incentivize them to work. No more money for sitting home. All right, that's section 3 done. One more to go. I got another chapter I want to talk about, my book, Solutions for America's Problem. We'll see you right after the break.
Corrupt judges, broken families, families torn apart. This isn't justice. If you've been wronged by the system, join us. Don't stand alone. Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, president of Americans for Legal Reform. We're the oldest legal reform group in the United States. The justice system in the United States should be transparent, fair, and open to everybody and accessible. Unfortunately, many times that's not the case. At Americans for Legal Reform, we are here to help. Join the movement. Visit AmericansForLegalReform.com and help reform the system before it fails you.
Hi, my name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
The America First Warehouse Ultra MAGA Store for all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Warehouse Ultra MAGA Store.
The Queens Village Republican Club is America's oldest Republican club, founded in 1875. Situated in President Trump's hometown in Queens, New York, we are America First MAGA Republicans, empowering fellow Republicans to get involved in the game of politics at the grassroots level. We host inspiring monthly club meetings on the first Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. For more information, please go to our website at www.qvgop.org.
It's Tuesday here at the America First Warehouse. I am Joe the Box.
And I'm John the Blanket. Freddie Rubino here from the America First Warehouse, coming to you live, the most patriotic venue in the land.
Welcome to Right for America.
I'm James Justice. We got Stephen Ruth over here. What are we doing, Steve? Fighting!
Welcome to Tune In Tuesday of the Patriots Podcast, live streaming every Tuesday night at 7:30.
Another edition of On the Right Side here, and you can catch us weekly, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
And welcome to Liberty's Cage, where we rip the veil off America's broken justice system, prisons that crush spirits, and a society that shuns people who have paid their price.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kevin Downey Jr. Podcast. Be free, stay free.
Welcome to Suffocating in Suburbia with me, your host, Stevie GB.
Hey, folks, welcome back to On the Right Side podcast. I'm Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive, here at the the America First Warehouse in Ronkonkoma, New York. For those of you outside the region, if you do travel to Long Island, you got to stop here. It is an amazing museum for patriots, and thank you, Joe DeBox, for being our benefactor here. So normally I'm with David Zare from Real America Voice as my partner on this show, but I got it all to myself. So I said, all right, David's not here. I'm going to talk about my book because I want you to consider taking a look at it. I put it together a few years ago, and it has 15 or 16 different chapters, from disability abuse to what we can do in the Middle East, and all kinds of things, education disparities, what we can do to control healthcare costs and higher education costs, et cetera, okay? So I just finished talking about my first chapter, which was on income inequality. Let's jump to my second chapter, which dealt with educational underperformance, okay? Let's cue the asset here. Here's some bullets that I put in at the end of that chapter after I cite many of my writings in various periodicals on these subjects. And folks, it's chock full of statistics and information to educate you and give you a certain perspective on these issues. But on this one, you know, I want to actually jump to the next one. Would you guys, to the second one on the income disparities? Let's see if we can get to that one, because anyway, I'm going to start talking about it while you're looking at this one presently. It talks about what the Asian culture does. And the reason I bring this up in my book is because the first thing a liberal and the mainstream media will talk about when it comes to education is money, money, money. Everything is money. If there's a drop in test scores, well, it must be a lack of money. Let's put more money in. And it's total garbage. We have doubled and tripled the amount of money that goes to our schools, and it's done nothing for performance. In fact, in New York, we spend an average of $36,000 per student, the highest of any state in the nation, double the national average. And where are our test scores? Right in the middle and slightly below. There's no correlation. Actually, one of my suggestions here is to actually tie state aid to performance in the schools. Don't hold your breath, but that would be an excellent way to go. But let me go back to the Asian culture. And the reason I bring this up is because there's different theories as to why they do so well in school. Listen, you look at the test scores. This is just objective fact. Asians do the best. Whites are second. Hispanics third. Blacks fourth, et cetera, et cetera. Why? There could be different reasons. Some will say, oh, they're just inherently smarter. I don't buy it, and I prove that to be incorrect. Or that whites are inherently smarter than the next group, or Hispanics smarter than the next group. Not true. The other is lack of money. We know that's not true. Based upon you follow the money, it doesn't correlate to better scores. Then it's racism. Well, you know, Asians were subjected to racism too. Why did they succeed so well? Okay. The real answer, as I say in my book, it's culture. It's culture. Read The Tiger Mom by Amy Chu. Okay. She's now a professor somewhere, I think in Yale. And she talks about how Asian culture, it's a tight-knit, two head of household family. And they push their kids, and it's sacrifice now for later, study hard, et cetera, et cetera. Why do we know it works? Here's why we know it works and why it's culture. They did a study, which I cite in my book. And it's very controversial stuff. We'll get lots of cards and letters about this, but it's actually true. When you compare the first generation Asians to whites, blacks, Hispanics, they're kicking butt. They're doing amazing, way ahead of the rest. Second generation, still doing better than whites, still doing better than blacks and Hispanics, okay? A little less, but still more. What happens to third generation? No difference between the Chinese or Asian youth and the white youth. And you say, how the hell is that? How did that happen? Well, certainly their DNA didn't change in that short time, so we can take the inherent intellect out of it. It has to be something else. It's not like the money flowing changed in the schools. No, it's the culture. These younger kids, the third generation, they became Americanized. Like all the other American kids, they want to go to movies, they want to play sports, they have all these distractions. It's not the same pressure. So that's proof that it's not money, that it's not racism, it's culture. And that's a good thing because we can change culture. We can incentivize people to work harder. Stop, as I say in my bullet here, stop the social promotion. Bullet number 2. When I was a kid, you'd have fear of getting left back if you didn't do your work. No more. You need more discipline in the schools, okay? Go to China or some of these Asian countries, Singapore, and speak back to your teachers. See what happens to you. In this country, the teachers are scared of the kids. I've long advocated that we should have a separate school for the really bad seeds within a school. You know, most of your violence and your really difficult kids, they're, 2% of the entire population. Get them out. Get them out of the school. Put them in a separate school. If you learn to behave, we put you back. Put all those bad kids in one school. They're not going to do well anyway. Stop with the idea you're going to rehabilitate them in the main school and mainstream. Stop them from distracting the other kids from learning. Get them the hell out of there. We're not going to put you on the street. We're going to put you in a separate school. We'll try to give you education at a level you can grasp, and you're not going to be disturbing all the other kids. We really, really do need that. And I would also say that in bullet 4 here, and then we can go back to the full screen, we need to get rid of the indoctrination within our schools. And it was exacerbated, it was put on steroids after COVID in the Biden administration, where our kids are coming out of school hating their country. They're being told that we're a racist, homophobic, patriarchal, misogynistic nation. Just like the Smithsonian, you go in there and they tell you about all the bad things about America. Now, I'm not saying we should hide the warts that we've had. Of course you have to teach about slavery and Jim Crow. They do. They teach about the Holocaust. They teach about Jim Crow. They teach about slavery. That hasn't changed. But when all you do is emphasize that, it's awful for America. In 4,000 schools around America now, they're teaching the 1619 Project, which was the concoction of this New York Times reporter who said that America was founded to create a slave colony, not to escape persecution of religion that was happening in Europe, but to promote slavery. Total garbage. Slavery wasn't created in America. It was ended in America and England. The slave trades were stopped by America and England, and we lost a lot of blood through a civil war for that. So don't sugarcoat the past, but you have to teach our children to love their country. And credit to Trump, he wants this 1776 project where we are going to be highlighting the benefits of this country. Look, you could either look at this nation as a nation that is 3/4 empty or 3/4 full. Yeah, we have a quarter or maybe an eighth of it that wasn't so good. But overall, with the shining light of the world, the greatest nation that ever existed on God's earth, teach that to your kids, because now they're coming out. A majority of them are not proud of their country. A majority of them, about half of them, would not fight to defend their country. That is scary, scary stuff, folks. We have to get better at this. And the only way we're going to do that is if we start to elect more like-minded people. I'm going to conclude this by going back to what the Democrats are trying to do. They're doing an autopsy of what went wrong in the 2020 election, and they keep on thinking it was messaging or the words they use. No, it was the policy that they enact, that they're on the wrong side of all of these policies, and specifically about downgrading America all the time. At the same time, you have this analysis saying stop using words like microaggression and safe places and how bad America is. What do? At the convention, they have this woman opening up the convention talking about how evil America is in that they had their convention on land stolen from the Indians, okay? This is their obsession with racial politics, identity politics, and when you do that, you tribalize the nation. So we're not one big America anymore. That's the gist of my book, Solutions to America's Problems. The whole preamble is about how we are engaged in a form of suicide of our nation and suicide of the West. We are the beacon of light that everybody wants to get into. We don't build walls to keep people in. We got to build walls to keep people out because everyone wants to come in here. How about going back to the point of teaching our kids what a wonderful nation this is? So I ask you, pick up the book, Solutions to America's Problems, and read about these various solutions we talk about. Let's have that 1776 project back in our schools. Let's open up to charter schools and more choice for students. Let's keep our tax rate low so we can grow our economy and be the strongest nation on earth going into the foreseeable future. So, folks, thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you in a week from now, every Wednesday, 2 o'clock live, and hopefully we'll have my cohort, David Zaire from Real America Voice back. I wish you a very healthy, happy, and blessed week, and we'll see you next week on the Right Side.